Well, good morning, everybody. As we finish up this week of forecasting, I kind of wanted to piggyback off of some of the stuff we included in last night's long-range analysis. At the beginning of that video, we talked a lot about what's happened over the last several weeks in terms of drought-reducing precipitation. So let's take another look at it here by looking at the difference in the drought monitor from November 1st up until the one that was released yesterday on January 5th. So this was at about the maximum extent of drought we saw across the country in terms of just any shade of drought. So from D0 to D4, we had about 85% of the land area in some form of drought. Now, if we just scroll this across, you'll see the changes, and we've seen some substantial changes. I'll just do that again for you real quick. This was November 1st, and this is the newest one on January 5th. So the onslaught of precipitation in the west has reduced it. The eastern Corn Belt has been reduced in drought, and we've seen drought reductions across parts of the northern plains as well. And in today's report, I include, again, the long-range outlook for January, February, March from the European model. We have another discussion about La Nina, and it would appear that given the setup that we're going to continue to see throughout the next probably 60 to 90 days, more of the drought area in the country being reduced. The area I'm most concerned about will be the plains going forward. As we talked about last night, they've continued to get missed. What is, of course, not being missed, and we've been talking about this now, it feels like for weeks, is that the jet stream pattern, again, just continues to flow open, unblocked from the west, and it's going to deliver several more systems into the western part of the United States. So let's kind of get right to that big picture story here by going to today's 0Z European model and just adding up the liquid equivalent of total precipitation here across the western United States. And I say liquid equivalent because, of course, some of this is going to fall as snow at higher elevation. What's really important to notice is, and again, we've been stressing this, is that the trajectory of these systems are not such that they're ejecting waves over the Rocky Mountains and emerging in the central United States. So it's primarily confining this heavy rainfall and heavy snow to the west. But again, some of these numbers here suggest an additional 8 to 10 inches of liquid equivalent. Just as a quick report, it's in the email as well. Lake Folsom is up 300,000 acre-feet just out of the last recent precipitation events, and we've also seen Oroville go up over 60 feet in depth. So these are incredible increases in big reservoirs here. On the snowfall side of this, again, we're going to be easily topping 3 to 6 feet in the Sierra Nevada. But you'll notice that into the central Rockies, parts of the Cascades, the northern Rockies here, snowfall totals won't be nearly as high as they will be where the edge of that zonal flow comes into the Pacific Northwest. Okay. From here, let's just take a look at the rest of the country. We do have two systems we're going to keep an eye on, and both of them are going to follow a track something like this, coming out of Oklahoma, eastern Kansas or Texas, and then moving across the country, adding quite a bit of rainfall to an area that's been extremely wet and had seen flooding as of late. We're drier north of that. There are a couple of weak clipper systems trying to come through the Canadian prairie into the northern plains, but quite dry across much of the western plains and the Great Lakes states with this pattern we're going to be seeing. So I'd like to show it to you by going to the high-res European model. So we're going to watch here as our first system we watched this week finally exits. It's the one that produced so much snow throughout sections of the Midwest and plains. You're going to continue to see the systems coming into the west. But by Saturday night, we need to be watching, coming out of Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas, a very weak low that as it moves across parts of the Mid-South toward the Carolinas, will add rain to the south of it right in through here. There is the chance on the northern side of this, from this part of Missouri through Illinois, Indiana, just this northern part of the Ohio River Valley here, getting some snow out of this, but there'll be some heavy rains on a slow-moving front, adding to that flooding problem here through the weekend. Now this gets to the Carolinas by Saturday night into Sunday, and then spreads some rain across the mid-Atlantic. What I'm concerned about is where does the snow line really set up here? We've seen a lot of differences in the model runs as to whether or not it's going to be confined to the Appalachian Mountains or at the higher elevation in Pennsylvania, or could it get down to the mid-Atlantic? That's still going to be a tricky forecast, even though this is just a few days away. So that system clears, excuse me. And the next system we're going to be watching, as you just see the continual onslaught in the west, shows up next Wednesday right here on the panhandles. And this is the system we've been keeping an eye on, moving across the country, again, hitting those same regions, spreading through parts of the Tennessee and Ohio Valley, bringing heavy rain through the lower Mississippi River Valley, which of course has been quite wet, into the southeast. Now what's unknown is what this might do next Friday the 13th. Will it exit or make a hard turn. That will all depend on how high the pressure is sitting right up here. And the models are keying in on this. This is the wave right here we're going to watch. And as it moves next Wednesday into Thursday through the Mid-South and over into the Southeast, it's still a great setup. I mean, this is what you'd expect to see. High pressure to the north, a ridge in this area, and the trough coming out of, the Carolinas or Georgia, Florida. And the question will be, can this move up the East Coast? Some of the ensembles continue to support that. So you'll see the ensemble member locations here. This is the system starting next Wednesday in the Panhandles, going over the Mid-South. And this is starting on Friday into early Saturday. The lows are still clustered in this area. So that means we're going to have to watch that system out there. Again, this is the end of next week and next weekend with this particular setup. The ensembles are picking up on it, though. This is the CPC forecast for week 2. This is the European for week 2. And this is the GFS for week 2. All of them showing substantial system at that point coming across the east, at least providing above normal precipitation. And of course, we don't see really an end in sight in the near-term models with the very heavy precipitation for the west. So that's going to continue well into the third week of January. Temperatures, this narrative hasn't changed at all. It's still mild across North America, it's mild across Europe, and it is mild across China. I think the first to fall in terms of temperature pattern will be China, with some of the cold air in Russia moving in that direction. But I think one of the big things a lot of us are discussing right now is, will we actually see by the end of this month a significant polar vortex disruption? So when the polar vortex is strong, much of the cold air tends to sit over the Arctic or over Siberia, and that's where we are right now. But you can see, if this is average, that by the time we get to the end of this month, the ensemble average has taken the polar vortex down below its normal strength. So that could result in a pretty substantial temperature change in February should this link up with the tropospheric flow. So I just want to let you all know I'm watching that, but in the near term, this pattern seems to be hanging on pretty tight given the jet stream level winds we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. Let's finish up with a bit about South America. We continue to see drier conditions in Argentina. I did check, and between Buenos Aires, Cordoba, and Santa Fe, they're still at record low NDVI values. So from space, the crop is not looking very healthy. Drier in parts of southern Brazil, but very wet in central and eastern Brazil, while harvest is really getting going here in Mato Grosso. And while it's quite dry through the next 7 or 8 days here in Argentina, the temperatures are expected to be 2 to 8 degrees Celsius above normal, continuing to just stress the crop in this area. So we're going to watch that carefully. In the report, we give the new long-range outlook for the rest of winter and talk a lot about La Nina and how quickly it's going to fade. We covered that in last night's in-depth report as well. So I hope you get a chance to look at all of that. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk again on Monday. Thanks.